Arlette, thank you for joining me today. We were talking about leadership recently. You are the manager of talent management and engagement at WestJet. And during this crisis time, you've really had an interesting experience. You wrote an article about how the values of WestJet have come alive at this time. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that with you today.
Yes.
So share what have you learned about leadership and through this time, specifically in your role as at WestJet.
hmm Well, it's an interesting time for a lot of people, a lot of companies. And one of the things that's so interesting is how fast things have had to move, and such critical decisions had to be made in a short period of time. And so that's exactly what happened at WestJet when we uh, knew that we were going to have to lay people off or move them onto temporary layoffs. Um, the executive of our company, and specifically our CEO, was very clear about his expectations around how we did that. And I think the how we did it is what was most impressive to me, having been in HR for a long time. Typically, what would happen is in most companies I've worked in, the senior leadership would get together, they'd make a whole bunch of decisions about what was going to happen to people in the company, and then people would be informed. But at WestJet, one of our key values is caring from the heart, and so really saw this value being put into action as we executed this process of trying to, in a caring way, move people onto was we actually polled employees, asked them what their preferences would be among four options that were being offered, and then we had like 90% of our staff submit a preference sheet, which is staggering, and it was in a 2-day period that they had to make these elections. And then what happened after that was the senior leadership basically executed the plan according to what people's preferences were, which left everyone feeling like they really had a say in their future, what was going to happen to them.
Yeah, and what strikes me is this opportunity to really build trust, right? Trust at so many levels, trust with the employees that they matter, that we're going to involve you in the process, but also trust in the teams to execute this, the leadership teams to go out in the organization and make this happen. Just so powerful. And what do you think that impact is on the employees in terms of overall engagement?
Yeah, I think there's a huge impact, and that's what we've seen and what I've seen. I was one of the employees that made the decision to say I would go on leave, so I'm currently on a leave from WestJet. But what I noticed was all of my colleagues, the other employees, had, from a trust perspective and an engagement perspective, like there was no one saying anything bad about what had happened. I mean, and given the situation, people could have been upset about what has happened. But what I heard was people feeling like they had done something good for the company to help the company out. And people don't typically make personal sacrifices for a company they don't trust or a leader they don't trust. And so the trust skyrocketed, and my observation was, I think also engagement has skyrocketed as well. So people's commitment to the company and to the mission, I think, has been shown to be I don't know, like
A real coming
increased, I
together.
guess.
Yeah, like a real coming together. We don't love the situation we're in, but we have to make some tough choices. People matter.
Yes.
And in this whole compassionate leadership piece, and it's interesting because when we talked about this, we were talking about other leadership examples, and the one I was sharing with you was here in Ontario with the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford. I mean, he was a leader who I have seen a different side of, this caring about the people, having to make tough choices, needing to take a stand and be bold, but also being very, very kind and thinking about the big picture and thinking about people.
Yes.
It's amazing. And so what do you think that this time, you know, that we find ourselves in does for the future of leadership and how we look at qualities and what leadership should look like.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And yes, we've both been thinking about that, about what this is going to look like going forward. I think what's kind of piqued my interest is noticing how different it looks. And yet at the same time recognizing what those characteristics are. So I say that because, you know, we have always been saying that leaders should be, you know, should create trust with their teams, that they should be vulnerable, they should be transparent, but we don't often see that demonstrated in organizations.
It's not often rewarded, is it?
Right, it's not recognized and rewarded in organizations. And so, you know, although we've been talking about this idea of compassionate leadership and building trust and caring about your people and understanding what motivates them, those kinds of things, we haven't actually seen those leaders be the ones that get, you know, promoted, recognized in our organizations. And so I think when we see it on this world stage now, as people notice, you know, people like Doug Ford or the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda, you know, seeing this new different kind of form of leadership that is actually being proven to be successful, I think that as we move forward, we're going to be able to see more leaders being willing to try this new style of leadership.
Yeah, that it is tied also to getting the result that you're looking for. It sounds like a great topic for us to have an even richer conversation about. So I really thank you for being here, and let's continue this conversation.